Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode on Laidback, the Atirozinka podcast. And our topic for this week is from idea to action, how to validate and launch that business you can't stop thinking about. And our guest for this week is Ben Ravilious. Ben is the founder of Leicester Startups and also the founder of UltimateWeb, which is a startup studio. Hello, Ben.
Hi,
Welcome to the podcast.
thank you.
It's good to have you here finally.
Yeah, great. We kept talking about it. Here
Exactly. Well, finally, we're here.
we are. Yeah.
So, is this your very first podcast then?
Not exactly. I've done live radio.
I
It's
know.
It's the first proper podcast. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are your expectations then?
I'm expecting you to ask me really difficult questions, and no, I like the format because you get to talk,
Yeah.
and it's much better than doing a presentation.
Could you go closer to the mic? Yeah.
It's much better, I think, than just doing a PowerPoint or something. You can actually have a conversation. So I really like that.
Yeah. So, hopefully, we are going to have a very relaxed conversation. But we're going to start off. With your background, could you tell us about your background and what actually drew you to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I've been in business doing web and app development for the last 23 years, a long time.
Yeah.
I was lucky when I was at university. I saw the web in its infancy, and I thought I really want to do that. It took me a few years, did some really boring jobs that I didn't like, but I got there in the end, and started my own agency with a friend. But I think the first sort of 10 years of that, we were kind of stuck in agency mode, just building other people's websites and then apps and things like that, which was, it kept the lights on, paid the mortgage, but perhaps wasn't very exciting. And I think maybe I always had an entrepreneurial kind of itch to scratch. And more recently, I kind of persuaded my team that let's try building our own things rather than other people's. About 12 years ago, I started a meetup group in order to meet people with great business ideas, sort of software tech ideas. And that went really well, and it's still going. That's Leicester Startups. But I also my company pivoted from doing paid work to being a startup studio where we code in return for equity in people's businesses, which is a really nice model because not a lot of people can afford to pay for an app or a SaaS product or something like that. And a lot of developers do the bare minimum, and then they want more money and more money. Whereas if you take equity, you're kind of invested in the business, and you want to see it to its fruition. So you become part of the team. So it builds that trust and skin in the game that the venture partners really appreciate. So we've gone from being a kind of humdrum agency doing paid work and all of the stresses of that to now having a portfolio of software products that earn us a bit of passive income, and we don't have to worry too much about things. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Interesting. Okay. So going back over 20 years now, so could you remember your very first business idea then, and that you couldn't stop thinking about? What was it, and what made it stick?
Well, I think that the first thing that we did in our sort of entrepreneurial mode wasn't our idea. And because we're in this startup studio model, often the ideas have come from someone else. Actually, most of the things that we've built aren't ours, as it were. Three guys in a room don't necessarily come up with world-beating ideas every day, but if you meet loads of people in a big city like Leicester, you do. So the very first actual project that we got involved in it's still going. It's called Participles. It's a software as a service company, and it's a audience polling tool. So it's an add-in for PowerPoint that allows you to do interactive polls live in your presentation. And that was invented by a maths lecturer at University of Leicester. He'd made a prototype. It was really popular with him and his colleagues and his students, but he was a full-time lecturer. He didn't have the time and experience to turn it into a proper business. And that was literally, he was doing that just when we were looking for our first gig, the first joint venture. And I actually met him within 6 weeks of starting to run Leicester Startups. So either I got really lucky or somebody was looking down on me, but it was it was meant to be. But that allowed us to really learn the ropes, because it's very different running an agency or freelance company. It's just being a jobbing builder, really. You do some work, you invoice them for your time. Building a SaaS product, building a scalable product is a completely different thing. And you have to think differently. You have to think about how you scale. You can't always be there. If you buy Microsoft Office or Dropbox or whatever, you don't tend to speak to somebody on the phone. You have to do it remotely and autonomously. So learning to build a product that customers can use self-serve sort of thing is actually quite challenging. And learning how to promote it as well. Again, it's no good going to networking events in town. The world is your network, and you can't
Yeah, you can
be
meet anybody.
everywhere.
Yeah,
So having to learn to promote something over the web. So we learned the ropes there. Weren't great at it to start with, but we got a foothold,
yeah,
and it was enough to start earning a bit of money that allowed us to slightly wind down our kind of paid work. So
yeah.
we started a slow pivot from mostly paid work to mostly passive income and software income.
Mm.
And now we've completed that pivot. So all of our efforts are now on either new projects, but more likely enhancing our existing portfolio.
Yeah,
So we have a lot more freedom.
yeah,
We work as hard as ever, but we're working on things in our own time and things that we're motivated by. So from a personal perspective, it's much more rewarding, and you're not working for the man anymore. And that's a nice feeling.
yeah. Fair enough. But why do you think a lot of people get stuck at the idea stage?
Yeah, there's lots of things that can cause that, and I think inevitably there's some naivety about what a business really looks like, and it doesn't hurt to run a business prior, even if it's a sort of freelance thing. Um, but I think a lot of people make classic rookie errors. Um, Actually, the biggest one is to fall in love with your idea too early. A lot of people have an idea, and maybe they watch The Apprentice or Dragon's Den and they start to fantasize about success. And that can be quite toxic, because if you're not listening to what the world's telling you about your idea in an objective way, it's very easy to become deluded about your idea. So one of the things we do a lot with Leicester Startups is try to help people validate their idea really early on
Yeah,
without remortgaging their house and selling the car and all that sort of stuff. We try to get people to put their toe in the water, test something. You might have heard of a book called The Lean Startup by
yeah,
Eric Ries. I mean, it's that kind of thing. There's a million ways of doing it. I mean, if you're in retail, for example, if you've got this ambition to run a shop, do a pop-up one for a week somewhere. You can often get an empty unit for like a week or something like that, and test your thing before you commit to it.
yeah,
But it's quite hard because you want to be passionate about your business idea, but especially with the more speculative, innovative ideas, the chances of success are actually not always that high. So you definitely don't want to commit your entire life's work and all your money to something that has a high chance of failure. You want to be quite circumspect about it, quite cautious actually. So one of the main rookie errors is I think people tend to throw themselves at something. Of course, you get people who are too timid as well. That's the other side of the coin, is people who are scared, and that's often happens when people maybe their family background or their friends aren't entrepreneurial, and it's very easy for the people around you to talk you out of trying. I mean, I think one of the things we accomplish with Leicester Startups is to put people in a room with others who are on a similar journey at whatever stage that might be.
mm,
So that means, if your idea is a bit wacky, you're not going to have people going, "That's ridiculous," get a job, or "Why on earth would you quit your day job for that," sort of thing. You put people in a room with others who are also maybe got a wild, ambitious idea. It's good for your confidence to see that what you're attempting isn't a ridiculous principle.
and that people
So
actually buy into
yeah,
it.
so I think those are things that it's a lot of psychology in it actually, and how you're brought up. If you've had a kind of regimented upbringing, or you've been in school and you've been in university and you've worked for a big company or whatever, it's very easy to become conditioned into needing permission to do things. A lot a
Yeah,
lot of people I meet who've got great ideas, but they're like waiting as if some hypothetical boss is going to give them permission
to
to
do it.
start.
Yeah,
Maybe one of the things we do with Leicester Startups a little bit is to almost tacitly give people that permission and say, yeah, well, let's try.
yeah,
What's the worst could happen?
yeah.
So yeah, sometimes you have to get people to overcome those little hang-ups and foibles that they might have. But yeah, there's loads of ways to validate ideas that don't involve like
But
tons of
not.
money,
Yeah,
and I think particularly with software products, you can often come up with what they call an MVP, a minimum viable product, like an early prototype that maybe does a little bit of the core functionality of your idea,
yeah,
and test it on a few friendly people,
yeah,
some early customers, early adopters you might know, and see if that goes well. And if it does, then you keep going. If they're all that this is rubbish, don't bother,
yeah.
then maybe you need to move on or change it somehow.
Yeah, okay. we're going to get to the minimum viable product concept you
Yeah,
mentioned, but before we get to that, you've talked about there are different ways to validate
yeah.
your idea. But what's the first step to take if you want to validate an idea? What's the very first step anybody can take?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people make the mistake of start building a whole product,
Yeah,
and there might be times when you need to do that. There might need, like I said, a prototype. You might need to do that, but actually, the first thing you need to do, provided it's not something that needs a patent. I mean,
yeah,
if you've invented a thing and it's a genuine invention, you might need to patent it, and that's tricky because that costs money and takes time. But assuming it's not patentable, the most important thing you can do is get to know people who you think might be customers. Really get to know them. Maybe not selling to them, but actually get to see how their lives are.
yeah,
And I mean, there's a brilliant book on this called The Mum Test, MOM, American spelling
yeah,
of mum. And it talks about basically asking people about their past and present.
yeah.
So if you're talking to a prospective customer, forget selling anything to them for the time
Get to know
being.
them.
Get to know them and ask them how they accomplish certain things. How do you solve that problem today? And they'll probably tell you, well, we use this piece of software or this widget, or we do it manually on a spreadsheet or whatever. And then you say, so how does that work for you? And, you want to get the emotive stuff out. You want them to go, you know what, it's actually really frustrating and it takes me hours to do my job and my boss isn't happy. And you want to listen. You want to be almost like a therapist to your customer at that point and ask them, well, how does that feel for you? Yeah, really frustrating. Have you ever looked at any other products that might solve this sort of thing? And maybe they'll name a rival product that you haven't heard of, or maybe they'll tell you about something that works but's frustrating for them. But if you really get to know their pain points, you get to learn things, and you may discover things that you yourself hadn't thought of. So additional feature ideas, or maybe you're going on the wrong track and some of the features you've thought of aren't quite what they need. But if you really get to know customer, so to answer your question, I would suggest that somebody who's got an idea should aim to speak to maybe 50 people who they think might ultimately be customers, and really get to know and make sure that they're all selling the same thing. If 50 people all give 50 different answers, you probably haven't got a focused idea. But
Yeah,
if even like half of them give a very strong indication that
you have a strong
you're onto
product.
something
Yeah,
there, then you progress maybe to the next stage, which might be building something.
yeah.
So socializing your idea, I think
Important. Yeah,
is the first thing to do. If you're getting absolute negative kickback, you've got to listen to that, and it's not nice. But it's
yeah.
better to do it then than having spent a year and 50 grand on an app or something.
Yeah,
And
because everybody
yeah,
can
yeah,
be negative. If
yeah,
everybody is negative about your product, there's
yeah.
something
It's
wrong.
it's there's something wrong there.
Yeah,
I think one of the things for people who are maybe a bit wary of selling or they haven't done that kind of thing before, actually that process of just listening is actually much easier.
yeah,
Selling is hard. Selling requires thick skin, but listening doesn't.
true.
So if you want to talk to somebody who you think might be a customer, you don't phone them up and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you. I've got something to sell you."
Yeah,
Then you're in a transactional situation. You say, "Listen, I'm researching something.
yeah,
Could I take 20 minutes of your time to find out a bit more about your job?"
yeah,
People quite like being asked that. It's kind of flattering, and if they can, they'll make time for you. And so you leave selling off the table to start with.
yeah,
Selling can happen once you've got your message straight, you've got your product straight,
yeah,
and you have to do that. But it's actually calmer and less transactional and less combative to just listen to people and make sure that enough people think you're onto something before you go any further. That can save an awful lot of heartbreak and time and money wasted.
Hmm, okay. But you did mention that you don't need to spend a lot of money to validate your idea,
Hmm.
right? So, what are the low cost or no cost ways to actually test an idea has a real market value?
Well, not everything can be done cheaply. I think if you're Elon Musk and you want to send people into space,
Yeah, you
you're going
gotta
to have
spend
to
money.
build a rocket at some point.
Yeah,
But for most ideas, especially software ones, there's always ways to try the thing out. One concept I really like is what they call running a concierge service,
yeah,
and that's where you actually start trading, but you do whatever the thing is supposed to do manually. So maybe you run your business out of a spreadsheet.
yeah,
Now, there might be some cases where that's not going to work because they need an instant result. But if it's something that, I don't know, processes data or delivers something for people, you can do that manually.
yeah.
just to see if there's a demand for it. So it's almost like being a freelancer for a while in your own product and seeing if people will buy it based on just doing the thing manually.
Yeah.
And if people like that, then you validated the thing, and then you move to do a more automated service.
Yeah.
There's a lovely version of that they call the Wizard of Oz thing. Like if you've ever watched the old Wizard of Oz movie, it turns out the wizard is just a little guy pulling levers. So a Wizard of Oz service is like concierge, but you pretend that it's automated.
Yeah.
So, but that way of sort of validating it by doing a dry run almost of your business using conventional tools. That can often be a really good way of doing it. A lot of people's ideas, of course, start with them doing something on a freelance basis, for example, seeing that a lot of people want it and thinking, how can I automate that? But if you've come at it with an automated idea from day one, actually taking a step back and behaving in a kind of non-scalable fashion can be really good, because that allows you to talk to customers and understand what on earth you're selling and how to describe it, and maybe it will educate you on what you should call your product, and words that are sympathetic with their customers, that kind of thing.
Okay. So, but you've mentioned testing and validating your idea, but how can one actually distinguish between something that's a passion project and something that can be a viable business? How can you differentiate between the two?
Can it not be both?
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because when it comes to passion, clearly you need a degree of passion to be able to pursue something, especially if it's a bit scary and you don't know if it's going to work, and maybe your friends and family are watching you doing it.
Yeah.
But you also need to have a degree of objectivity, and that's a bit of a kind of contradiction, isn't it? To be passionate and dispassionate at the same time, that's not easy.
Yeah.
So I think you need passion, but I think if somebody talks a lot about passion, I'm a bit wary of that.
Why?
It sounds like maybe they're doing it to impress other people.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, not always, but it can be a tell that maybe they're
just trying to
they want people to like respect them or whatever. And I'm not knocking being respected, but
do for yourself.
The customers have got to respect your product first. Where you earn respect if you accomplish something. And I think following your passion, maybe following someone else's struggles might be a better way of looking at it. Really being a bit more humble, maybe, and recognizing that customers are struggling with something and you're there to help them is probably a more constructive way of looking at it.
Yeah. Okay, so now that you've mentioned customers, like you mentioned that customers are struggling and you're trying to find a solution to their problems. So what role do you think talking to potential customers play in the validation process?
It's everything at the beginning. And again, if you have an idea and you go straight into sales mode, you will most likely just get the door slammed in your face.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you don't learn anything. They go, no, I'm not interested. Hang up. You've not learned anything. Whereas if you're talking to them and maybe postponing the sales conversation, then you're getting a chance to find out about their lives, like I said. And I think that's much more important to start with. Okay. So I always think you need to be doing that first. Of course, at some point, you're going to have to make a decision. Yeah, I think I've nailed it. I think I've got the rudimentary idea of what this needs to be, what I'm going to call it, how I'm going to describe it, and I'm going to start trading in some fashion or other. And at that point, you're kind of actually building something potentially, or starting something that looks somewhat like a business.
Okay. So, but what do you think are the common mistakes people actually make when they're trying to validate their idea then?
Well, I mean, the main thing is self-delusion. Honestly, there's so many people. I've met people who've had an idea. Maybe it's a good one, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. I've long since stopped judging other people's business ideas. You
Fair
never
enough.
know.
You never know.
And they may have an insight that I don't have. So, but what I do see is people who have an idea and then don't don't seem to progress it. It's like they sit on it, or it's like they're coddling it, and it looks like they're not really
taking action.
It's not entered the kind of playing field, and and that either they are lacking confidence personally, or probably more often they've got doubts about the idea themselves and they don't want to hear the truth. So self-delusion is probably the number one mistake.
At the top of the list.
Yeah. There are other things. There are obviously, I mean, your personality makes a big difference. If you're a bit caustic with other people, or if you're not listening to customers or whatever, if you don't have that skill, that's going to be tricky. The other thing is people fall out with business partners and all sorts of stuff, have differences of opinion, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. The other thing is people pick ideas that they themselves aren't able to execute. If I said, all right, I'm going to build space rockets, realistically, I have no background in space and I don't have the money or the connections in that industry. So it's not realistic. So it's best if the ideas people go after are something that they have some skin in the game. So most people's good ideas come from their own personal experiences.
True.
So maybe they've been working in industry for a few years and they're beginning to see how that works, and maybe some things that don't work, see people struggling with particular things in that industry, and they have this idea for a solution. So that's the most common route for good ideas. Ideas don't grow on trees and they don't come out of thin air. I know we talk about ideas kind of coming to you when you're in the shower or something like that. That's true, but it will have started with something previous, some things you've seen, some life experience. I know we've all got that. It doesn't matter what age you are, what industry you're in. You all got some peculiar life experience that's unique to you, and the best ideas tend to be something where you've got some unique insight or some unfair advantage. Something that other people don't. I've often heard it said it's good if you've got two good skills. So you're good at, if you can sing and you can dance, you can do more, sort of thing. So people who have maybe more than one skill often do well because they can see crossovers in things. Or more than one life experience. That can often make sort of hybrid ideas that no one else would have thought of because they don't have those things.
But once the person has validated the idea now, right? What do you think is the best course of action for them to take then?
Well, you do need to build something at some point. The main thing is to have that motivation behind you that you're onto something. I can't stress how important that is. Otherwise, you're flogging a dead horse, and that's miserable, and you will fail, and you probably won't even know why you fail because no one's telling you. It's like, how British people are in restaurants, and if the food's rubbish, the waiter comes along and says, "Is everything okay with the food?" And every British person will go, "Yes, it's fine." It could be absolutely horrible. And you want that feedback. You want people to be candid with you. So I think you've got to be absolutely sure that you're onto something. It may still not work out for a myriad reasons, but the next stage is probably to build a prototype. This idea of the minimum viable product would be the sort of software idea. Find a way to kind of start the engine in a more serious way. Again, if you're in software like me, it's easier. If you're really passionate, you can pull an all-nighter and do a first rudimentary thing. Clearly, if your idea is like a hardware thing or something that takes a bit longer to make, that's tough. That's just how it is. The other thing to think about is whether you can partner with other people. And that's something we've done quite successfully. If you're a small company in a big market with loads of big players, not necessarily rivals, but other organizations and companies in your space, then trying to partner with them can often be very, very good, because a big company might have the reach that you would take years to grow, but if you can piggyback on their reach, and maybe a revenue share or something like that, that can be a good way. So partnerships are quite a strong way of growing and getting that foothold. Otherwise, you can easily, it's very easy to have a great product that no one's heard of. And that's sad, isn't it? I mean, if it actually works and it fulfills people's needs, but no one knows about it, that's hard.
That's horrible.
It's a shame.
So, but when they are taking action and they're trying to launch something new, so which one do you think is more important? Is it speed or perfection?
Speed.
Speed is more important.
Unless it's somebody's life depends on it. If it's a life support machine or a pacemaker or something like that, then perfection is good. But generally, most entrepreneurs would follow the "perfect is the enemy of good" mantra. There's a lovely quote from Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, who said, "A year after launch, if you're not embarrassed by your first product or your first iteration of your product, you were going too slowly." Facebook's mantra, isn't it? Move quickly and break things. I think there's limits to that. losing people's personal information or spying on them, that's not breaking things. That's not good. But yeah, I think moving quickly, because unless there's patents available to you, you do need to be the first to do the thing. You need first mover advantage, and that does require a degree of speed. And I think personal experience, we've done things in the past where we took way too long, and other things, other competitors and other ways of accomplishing things came up. I think we've learned we're a bit faster now. But yeah, moving quickly, sometimes selling before you feel ready is actually a good thing to do. You clearly need to have validated the idea, but if the product itself isn't very well polished, you kind of need to get selling it anyway. Having 100 customers demanding it tomorrow is quite motivational when it comes to polishing things when they need to be. But I've seen like, really mature old software products where bits of it is still a bit ropey. I can think of one company where they've been going 10 years. It's used by millions of people, and their billing side of things and the account stuff is still bad. There's no tax invoices and stuff. And I'm like, they obviously just went for it, and let's deal with that stuff later on.
Yeah.
So,
BetterHelp is a paid partner of this episode. Growing up in Nigeria, mental health was not discussed in our homes. As a man, you are discouraged from showing your emotions, as this is seen as a sign of weakness. If this resonates with you, you are not alone. About 62% of adults believe that societal attitudes stop them from seeking mental health support when they need one. And that's why I've teamed up with BetterHelp to stop the stigma around mental health and encourage you to seek mental health support from credentialed therapists when you need one. These credentialed therapists listen, ask questions, and help you to see things from new perspectives in order to improve your life. BetterHelp is on a mission to help you start therapy as easy as possible. If this is something you're interested in, click on the link below or go to betterhelp.com/laidback to match with a credentialed therapist in as little as a couple of days. You can also get 10% off your first month by using my link or the code Laidback.
yeah.
Okay. So, but now I'm going to bring you back to the minimal viable product concept I mentioned. So, you've talked about now that, but what does it look like in real life?
Okay, so it doesn't have to be an actual working solution.
Yeah.
It can actually be smoke and mirrors. I've seen people put up a holding page and say, product that does this coming soon, be one of the first people.
Yeah.
And they'll say, look, I mean, I've seen authors do this. They say, I'm writing a book. This is the title. This is a strapline. Be one of the first people to read it. Actually, they haven't written a book. They're just going to count subscriptions.
Pre-order.
Yeah, pre-order. And if they get 1,000, they pick a threshold. If they hit 1,000, I'm going to write the book. That's validation of something. Okay. And that could be as simple as putting up a.
That means somebody is interested in what they will have to say.
Yeah. Kickstarter campaigns are a great example of that. Kickstarter gives you pledges of money, and marketing and validation all in one. If it's typically a tangible thing, Kickstarter style crowdfunding things can be really, really good for that. And some Kickstarter campaigns they hit their funding target. They might take a year to actually deliver, and I think most people understand that's part of the gig. So lots of ways you can validate without necessarily building the whole thing. If you're a coder and you just love coding and you want to go and build a working version of your software product, of course, knock yourself out. But it's very easy to get stuck in building more and more features and putting off launching because someone said, yeah, that's great, but I need it to make the coffee for me as well. And you're like, okay, I'll go away and spend another 6 months building the coffee machine and adding it on. Customers at that point often tell you things that are nice to have rather than absolute necessities. So getting off the blocks with a thing that does at least something useful to them is usually the best thing. There's a lovely infographic out there of what an MVP is, and it's how not to do it, and it's like building a car, and it's a wheel, two wheels and a chassis, and finally a car. At no point is that useful to anybody until you've got to a car. So at no point during that journey do you get any feedback. Whereas if you start with giving them a skateboard, it's pretty rudimentary.
Yeah.
But it does actually transport you, and you can start talking to customers. And they probably won't like it very much, but they'll say, okay, it's cold and I can't steer it very easily, and it's got no power. Okay, we'll stick a handle on it, and okay, it's a scooter now, and okay, let's stick an engine on it. Iterating your thing starting with the most rudimentary thing you can possibly get away with is usually a good idea.
Yeah.
Again, there are exceptions. There are things that are life critical or whatever, and clearly you can't do that. Those sorts of things tend to be built by big companies with big budgets, pharmaceutical companies, etc. But for everybody else, a lot of things can be validated quickly, cheaply, and painlessly. The example I gave before, if you've got this idea of going into retail, doing a market stall, doing a pop-up shop, going to a Christmas market or something like that to see if people like your stuff is pretty cheap, low commitment, and you get to talk to customers, and if it goes well, off you go. I'm sure the likes of Dunelm and Marks and Spencer's had that life story. They started as, I think both of those started as market stalls.
Yeah.
That's a great way of doing it. You don't even need to have that ambition to start with. You just do a thing and see if people like it and see where it takes you.
So, but we've talked about having the idea, validating it, and taking action. But is there any mindset, like what mindset does one actually need to do to have actually move from a dreamer to a doer? What do you need to do?
I think you need to be more like a scientist.
How?
You need to be curious, and you need to be experimental.
Yeah.
Now, you do still need the passion to drive you to try.
Yeah.
But scientists are passionate people. They want to change the world or discover something.
Yeah.
But they have to be objective about it as well. So having a hypothesis, to take the scientific analogy, you have a hypothesis, you run an experiment, you measure something, and then you iterate. It might be that you discover it doesn't work, or the thing you believed, your hypothesis is wrong, and you move on or do something else or tweak it.
Yeah.
But that kind of scientific mindset where you run experiments. So your MVP, your minimum viable product, is effectively a piece of experimental apparatus.
Yeah.
I would argue it's a psychology experiment. It's you're testing on humans to see if they behave in a particular way when confronted with your product. So yeah, you kind of need to be a bit of a psychologist and test on humans.
Okay. But apart from being a psychologist and thinking like a scientist,
Yeah.
being curious, being experimental, what if someone actually has a lot of self-doubt and the person is scared? How do you think the person can actually handle that during the early stages?
Well, clearly you need at least enough confidence to start doing something. If you're really, really nervous, maybe it's not the right thing for you. But actually, the kind of humility, if you like, that you might have in that situation might actually be a good thing. It might mean that you're a listener, not a talker, sort of thing. And so I would say to people who are of that frame of mind, they're a bit nervous about it, that mindset might actually be positive. I think, again, if you've got the myth that an entrepreneur or a business person is this sort of punchy, confident person who's, gonna trample over the bodies of their rivals or whatever, if you watch The Apprentice too much, basically, you might get the impression that business is very cutthroat, dog eat dog. But it doesn't have to be. And with innovative businesses, the chances of you bumping into somebody, at least locally, who's doing the same thing of you is almost zero, I would say. So actually being empathetic, being sensitive, when it comes to listening to customers and getting feedback, is actually, that's a quality, not a detractor. So I think, I think don't beat yourself up is the first thing. You don't have to necessarily be a showman or a showwoman. You don't need to be that kind of person. You're going to have to learn at some point to present, probably. If you're petrified about the idea of talking to strangers or going on a stage or whatever, you're probably going to have to get there, but you don't have to do it overnight. And as I said, do it, self-progression or whatever. You want to get into your discomfort zone, but not way outside of it. So
But when I started the podcast, right, one of the hardest things for me was the rejection. You reach out to people you want to do a podcast with, and a lot of people reject you. Right. What about somebody who is starting a business and they are scared of rejection? Because it's something a lot of people are scared of. How can they navigate that?
Yeah, that's tough. And I think, again, I'd come back to the more kind of scientific approach. One good way of doing it is imagine that you were testing someone else's product. So you don't have the skin in the game then. You're like, okay, let's see if people like this other person's thing. if they say no, it's no skin off your nose. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. So you kind of need to suspend your ego a little bit and not worry about it too much. Clearly, if you're going in with a crazy bonkers idea that's obviously got no legs whatsoever, well, maybe a dose of reality is required. But anything that's even plausible, I think not worrying about it too much. If you're somebody who's got imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
one of the best places to get validation is from customers. You know, people with imposter syndrome is a bit of a paradox because
Yeah.
you listen to yourself, but you don't believe yourself.
Yeah.
If everyone else is telling you you're good at something, then maybe you should listen to them.
True.
That's a piece of advice from Adam Grant. Actually, he says
Yeah.
imposter syndrome is a paradox
Yeah.
because you're listening to your own echo chamber, not what the universe is telling you. So again, if you go talking to some early stage customers, they can be friendly people. They're not.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a sales situation where you're going to have the door slammed in your face. And,
Yeah.
and if you ask somebody nicely, look, could I just have 20 minutes of your time? A lot of people will say yes to that. That's not rejection. Even if they say I can't do it, it's not rejection. It's just I can't.
Yeah. No, but I understand that, but I understand that a lot of people are actually scared. I have friends and some have told me that they would rather not ask than ask and get a no. But I realized doing the podcast taught me that you have to like put your ego aside.
Yeah.
You may reach out to somebody and they may not even reply you.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Well, I mean, I suppose the answer is to ask lots of people to
Yeah,
start
yeah,
with.
yeah.
And what you might find is that the sorts of people who work well for you self-select in.
Yeah.
After a while, you might to start noticing why certain sorts of people say no to you.
Yeah.
Now, early days, it could be you don't have the gravitas. They're like, who are you, sort of thing.
You're
and
just starting out.
that just takes time.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think about Leicester Startups, when we started running that 12 years ago, myself and many of the other people there were real like dabblers who didn't know what we were doing, and we're on our first startup. And if I look at who turns up now, there's some really accomplished entrepreneurs in our community.
Yeah.
So time does well, and being persistent about it and just keep get
Doing what
momentum
you're
and keep
doing.
going is one answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always a bit scary, and like I said, if you're surrounded by people, friends, and family who are think you're crazy, or maybe secretly a bit jealous or whatever, then
Jealous.
yeah, people. I know people who work in big institutions
Yeah.
who make the break to do something else, and you can see there's jealousy from their colleagues. It's like, why does she get to go leave home, at least leave work early and go and do her thing or whatever? And
Fair
I think
enough.
that's just jealousy, isn't it? So
Fair enough. But what's the myth about launching a business that you wish more people would stop believing? And we talked about ego and everything. Like, what's that myth that they need to stop believing so they can actually launch?
I
business?
think, and again, maybe this applies more to innovative businesses than others, but I think this idea that business is dog eat dog.
Yeah,
I think that's the one thing.
that's true.
Of course, there are businesses you could run which are dog eat dog. I mean, you see it in Leicester. You'll see somebody will set up an ice cream parlor,
Yeah.
and then someone else will set up one next door, and I'm just like, why would you do that? No, if there's a lot of business to go around and there's space for more than one, great. But that kind of mentality where you're going to be you're more motivated by competing with someone else than doing
Actually
well.
doing something.
Yeah,
well,
it suggests to me what they call it extrinsic motivation. You're more worried about what someone else thinks about you
yeah.
rather than what you accomplish for
Internal
yourself.
problem. I mean,
Yeah.
actually internal validation. Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree.
so I think that's probably the main one. Look, if you're a competitive sort and you're really good at business and you can take someone else's idea and do it better than you are,
Yeah.
business is business. All is fair in love and war. But I think it's much easier if you work on something that's unique to you.
Yeah.
The chances of you succeeding are potentially higher, and it's more exciting because you've innovated. That's an exciting thing.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. You did mention a book earlier on, The Lean Startup,
Yeah,
and the other one, The Mom's
the
What?
mum test.
Yeah. So, but apart from these two books now, what other book do you think, or a podcast, do you think anybody who is dreaming of launching a business should actually own or listen to? A book or podcast?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't actually do a lot of reading or listening to things, but I think you need to specialize. I think you need to find things that are special to you.
Yeah.
There's lots of good generic stuff out there. Some people love to listen to Diary of a CEO or Gary Vaynerchuk and all that sort of stuff. I'm pinch of salt for me.
Why?
Some of it's just hype. Diary of a CEO, he seems to get on quacks and things nowadays, and I'm a bit like, what? Who even are these people? I think finding something that's unique to
Resonates
you,
with you, yeah.
and I'm not going to sit here and name books or things. I think it's quite personal. The
Yeah.
two books I've mentioned are good because they're very generic, but they help.
Give you an idea.
They help two significant problems that a lot of people struggle with: validating ideas and talking to early
To
stage
people,
customers,
yeah,
and
yeah.
those apply to almost everybody.
Yeah.
But there's millions of great business books out there, and you put me on the spot. I can't name a great one that.
Fair enough.
I mean, I've read books about startup communities, for example, that got me doing what I do. But that would only be relevant if you were doing that thing. And
Yeah.
so I think trying to embed yourself in the industry or sector or environment that you're interested in, that your business is focused on, there are probably podcast, books,
Yeah.
influencers who are unique to that, and that's probably where I'd go. So yeah, I'm not. It's not for me to say what those would be. You almost like I think it's almost like early on in a business, you almost need to do an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
In your own. I don't mean literally. You could do, but sort of metaphorically, you need to do an apprenticeship in your idea.
Of course.
Hang out amongst the people who have the problems you think you're solving. Get to know that. Yeah, that could involve reading books and listening to podcasts from people who are in that sector.
Yeah.
I'd see it as an apprenticeship almost.
Yeah. I think whatever you decide to. There's this book I actually read that's helped me in life. I won't lie. The book is Mastery by Robert Greene. I don't know if you've ever read it before.
I've read other Robert Greene things.
Yeah. I love that book because it talks about being a master in your field.
Yeah.
No matter the field you decide to go into, you have to be a master.
Yeah.
But before you become a master, you must be an apprentice.
Yeah, totally.
There's nobody who becomes, for example, let's use football. There's nobody who becomes Cristiano Ronaldo without being an apprentice.
I think it's Malcolm Gladwell talks about doing your
10,000 hours. Yeah,
that's a bit of a random pluck a number from thin air, but I think there's truth in it.
It's all about doing a lot of repetitions. That's it.
Yeah,
it may not be up to 10,000. 10,000 hours.
You might be quicker or
exactly.
slower.
Yeah.
And again, I'd go back to this idea also about looking at your own unique qualities.
Yeah.
Because if we all come with, if you've already got 5,000 hours in something already, you've got a head start. So, don't start with something completely new. You use what you've got. So, a very great friend of mine, Jim Shields, wrote a book about this, and he talked about trying to be the guy who does something, not just a guy who does it. That's a sexist phrase, but he meant anybody. And I think that's what you're talking about. It's the same thing. Is trying to be unique.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean taking over the world. It could be you're the very, very best person at doing something really niche and obscure, but you can make a living out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to look at it. It's Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator Accelerator, talks about digging a well before you dig a lake.
Yeah.
So if you've got a startup idea and you can find 50 people who really love your solution, that's actually better than trying to build Google on day one. Finding a niche and getting a foothold. I'm mixing metaphors badly here, but getting a foothold on something fairly niche is usually a good idea, and it's manageable.
Yeah.
For a small business, could just be you and somebody else. That's much more manageable, and then you can expand it.
Yeah.
So getting that foothold is really important. So I think I think that's part of it too. But I think you do need to have some unfair advantage, like a life skill or an experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. But because of time, I'm going to ask you one final question, right? What would you say to somebody who is out there, who has had a business idea in their notes app for 3 to 5 years, but they've not validated the idea? Is just there in their notes app on their phone?
Well, actually, I'll give you a slightly tangential answer.
Yeah.
And maybe this person's already done it. I don't know, but I would actually hang around with other entrepreneurial people.
Yeah.
They won't necessarily have all the answers. But it, like I said earlier, it will make you feel like you're not strange for wanting to try. So it's almost a bit of therapy, is to surround yourself by people who don't think you're being a bit stupid.
Yeah.
That starting point, that gives you a kind of base to try things, people you can go and chat to in a coffee shop or a pub about it, because doing it alone is not easy.
Yeah.
And I'd say, I mean, one of the things you probably want to do is, it's usually a good idea to have at least one co-founder when you're running something. There's lots of benefits. They might have complementary skills, but they also might help burst any echo chambers that you've got. If you're not listening to something and they go, hang on, I think that's rubbish, and call you out on it, that's really healthy. So having a business partner who can question your thinking, that's really important. So I think kind of socializing yourself and your idea early on is probably the first thing I do. And if you really haven't shared your idea with anyone,
Yeah.
I'd be like, why? At what point did you think you were going to, how long did you think you'd be able to delay that?
Yeah.
So if you haven't shared your idea and you've sat on it for 4 years, okay, maybe you were just really busy and you didn't have time, fair enough. But most people who do that are actually worried about I think you touched on it, they're worried about rejection or somebody saying it's stupid, and so they don't share it. But what's the old saying? But boats in the harbour are safe, but that's not what boats are for. So yeah, you do have to have a little bit of courage. And like I said, the best people to share with to start with would be some fellow travelers, some other entrepreneurs who know what that feels like. They will demystify and de-risk it for you in your head, and they will give you feedback, and they probably won't laugh at you either. They'll go, okay, I'm not sure that's a good idea, or try this, or let me introduce you to this person who did something similar once. And then it becomes less of a sort of psychological barrier and just a process that you can follow.
But since you mentioned that, like, you mentioned being scared, rejection, and all right. So there's, I don't know if this is the right phrase or term for it. Analysis paralysis or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you keep analyzing and analyzing and analyzing and analyzing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do it. And for example, academics do it a lot. Because we keep analyzing, you may end up making mistakes. Because I don't know, because you are scared to take action. I don't know, we keep on. So why do you think a lot of people do that?
Well, it could be your personality, and some people are suited to academia because it requires perfectionism and analysis.
Yeah.
And I'd like my academics to be like that, so then they're going to do good research and not make mistakes. So that's okay. And if that's what you like doing, then pick a career that suits you. But I think entrepreneurship is all about calculated risks. It doesn't mean to say you need to be a gambler.
Yeah.
You shouldn't take stupid risks.
Yeah.
But you need to be comfortable with a bit of discomfort and comfortable with a bit of risk, and have a trial and error kind of mentality. I think you need to have the mentality of an explorer. You're slashing through the jungle with a machete. You don't quite know where you're going, but you're heading in a direction, and you just need to be a bit comfortable with that. But analysis paralysis. I have met people who have had an idea and then spent 6 months writing a business plan. And there's a famous paraphrase that no business plan survives first contact with a customer. It's probably Eisenhower's no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. You have to go into entrepreneurship with incomplete information. It's inevitable. You can never know the perfect answer. No product is ever complete. You're always developing it anyway, and things change. You can never really know what the solution needs to be on day one. So over planning it, when I see people do that, I usually call them out on it, and I'll like, what's stopping you from actually launching today? And usually when they come up with all these reasons, it's usually a fig leaf. It's usually a nervousness.
Is it linked to fear as well?
It's fear of failure.
Yeah.
And so you say, okay, well, what do you actually think could go wrong here, and what would be the consequences for you?
Yeah.
I usually say to people, the most common consequence for a business failure is nothing. Nothing happens. No one knows. No one laughs at you. Just crickets, right? Yeah. That's not good, but it's not tragic. It's okay. It's failure is quiet usually. Not always. I mean, if you've made a ton of noise about something stupid and failed, then maybe people get to hear about it. But for most business ideas, they die quietly in a corner, and no one notices. And that you can live with that.
Yeah, fair enough. So one shouldn't be scared to actually take the leap.
Yeah.
So, but because of time, where if anybody wants to connect with you, where can the listeners actually connect with you and learn more about your work?
Sure. So if you've got startup ideas, you want to mix with other entrepreneurs, then the best place to look locally here in Leicester is leicesterstartups.com. That's our startup community. So we're a non-profit peer community for early stage founders. And we accept people at any stage in the journey. Even if you've just had an idea and you don't know what to do next, we can be really helpful there. We do have some criteria. We are only there to support people working on innovative, scalable ideas. So there needs to be some figment of innovation what you do. It doesn't have to be a tech thing per se. It could be in retail or any other sector.
Yeah.
We even have some non-profits in our community, but there's got to be something innovative about it, and it's got to be something that could potentially grow and scale. So we don't really help freelancers or agency model people who are selling professional services,
Yeah.
unless they're also working on a side hustle that is scalable. So yeah, I mean, and I'd say to anybody anywhere in the world who's got an idea, go and find your local startup community if that's what you're doing, because the benefit of hanging around with other people is immense. If they're not competing with you, they're going to help you.
Yeah.
That's entrepreneurs do that. They don't think, well, why should I help that person? They'll go, okay,
And they understand the struggle.
I know somebody who's had this problem. I know a good solicitor. I know a good accountant. Whatever it is, they'll help you.
Yeah. But if somebody wants to connect with you, I know you've mentioned
Sure.
Leicester Startup, but and the person's not in Leicester, is there any other way they can actually
Well,
connect with
I'm
you?
reachable on LinkedIn if people want to talk to me. I don't have the capacity to mentor people from all over the world or whatever, but I'm always happy to take contacts via LinkedIn.
Okay.
So yeah, Ben Ravilious.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah, or you, like I said, you can find me via Leicester Startups if you're local here.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ben, because
Thank
that's
you.
all the time we have for today.
It's a pleasure.
So did you enjoy this then?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So are you gonna come back again then?
Yeah, if you'll have me, yeah. What should we talk about?
We can talk about any other thing,
Yeah.
anything you want.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe one of the things I want to do is get more people talking about their successes.
Okay.
And a lot of people in our community are still work in progress kind of businesses.
Yeah. We can plan that. They can
We've had
come
one
on
or
board.
two people. We've had one or two people who've made it and sold a business, and
Yeah.
hearing their story and warts and all, that's usually good.
Yeah.
Exciting.
They can come on board and we can talk about that.